Princess Lyra of the Xyos Collective had always existed in a world defined by perfect logic. Her existence and that of her people was built on cold, calculated decisions aimed solely at the collective good. Emotions were inefficient, an unnecessary distraction in the pursuit of pure data and logical reasoning. When she was tasked with observing the newly discovered species humanity, it was a simple mission. She would study them, file her report, and return to her own race's perfect order. She landed her sleek vessel near a small, rural settlement where the technology was primitive and the humans were not a direct threat. It was there she encountered a boy. He looked no older than 10 of their years, with dirt on his face and a curious light in his eyes. Instead of reacting with fear, as most would have, he offered her a small red fruit from the tree under which he had been sitting. The gesture was illogical. He was giving away a resource without any promise of return. She scanned the fruit for toxins, confirming it was safe, but her programming dictated that she should decline, to avoid unnecessary interaction. But the boy's eyes, filled with something she couldn't quite categorize, created a glitch in her processing. She took the fruit. And in doing so, she felt something unexpected, a sensation she could not fully define. He smiled. The warmth in that smile was unlike anything Lyra had ever encountered, and it left a deep, inexplicable impact on her. The boy Kale visited her every day. He spoke of things that made no sense to her logic-driven mind. He described the feeling of the sun on his skin, not as a measurement of temperature, but as a feeling. He told her of the sound of the wind in the trees, describing it as a song, a concept for which her database had no equivalent. Kale, in his simplicity, experienced joy not for any productive reason, but because it brought him happiness. He laughed, a sound that made his chest rise and fall in a rhythm without any apparent function. The more Lyra watched him, the more she realized how little she understood about what made him happy. One day, Kale showed her a collection of smooth-colored stones. Each one had a memory attached. One was from the day he had learned to swim. Another had been given to him by his mother before she left. These were not just rocks to him. They were anchors of memory, vessels for meaning. It was the first time Lyra understood that for humans, objects were more than just material, they carried meaning. Lyra began to learn more about humanity's way of life. It wasn't based on efficiency. It wasn't about maximizing resources or productivity. It was about love, memory, and joy. She watched as Kale's father ran out into a violent storm, not to save himself but to help a neighbor whose roof had failed. It was illogical. Risking his life to fix a roof that could wait? Yet when he returned, drenched and exhausted, Kale didn't analyze the situation. He simply ran to him and hugged him. Lyra's sensors registered the action: comfort, relief, love, but she could not process it. It was a concept beyond her understanding of the world. Weeks passed, and Lyra's observations deepened. She learned of humanity's stories, tales of heroes, monsters, love, and loss. Kale would sit with her and read from worn paper books, his voice filled with passion and drama. Lyra could see that these stories were more than entertainment. They were simulations of human emotion, a way to safely experience fear, courage, heartbreak, and hope. They were ways of preparing for life's real battles. Kale spoke often of his dreams. He wanted to build things not just for function, but for beauty. He wanted to see mountains, not to catalog their data, but to feel small before their grandeur. Lyra recorded these observations, but when she sent her reports back to the Xyos Collective, they were no longer cold data streams. They contained words like hope, wonder, and joy, concepts her collective could not comprehend. The collective responded with confusion, querying her about the anomalous data. They didn't understand the purpose of stories or dreams. They saw humanity as an inefficient species, a chaotic variable that had no place in their perfect system. The order came down. Humanity was to be assimilated, their resources reallocated for the greater good. The command was logical. It made perfect sense. But as Lyra looked at Kale, who was showing her a drawing he'd made of them both standing together under the sun, something in her shifted. He'd given her a name in his language, a word that meant starlight friend. In that moment, Lyra understood. The order from her collective was efficient, but it was also wrong. For the first time in her life, Lyra made a decision not based on logic, but on a feeling she had learned from Kale. It was terrifying, it was exhilarating. She severed her connection to the collective, knowing she would be branded a traitor, but she didn't care. She couldn't care. As she knelt beside Kale, who looked up at her with trusting eyes, Lyra finally understood what it meant to be human. It was not about cold calculations or perfect efficiency. It was about connection, emotion, and the simple act of being. Princess Lyra of the Xyos Collective had made a decision that would change her forever. And for the first time, she felt truly alive.